Imagine a young girl sitting alone in a dimly lit farmhouse room in Northern California, surrounded by books stacked taller than she is, reading by flashlight long after everyone else has fallen asleep. She doesn't know it yet, but she's preparing for a future where she'll become one of the most iconic actresses of her generation, an actress whose characters would define an entire era, and whose personal resilience would inspire millions. Before the red carpets, before the magazine covers, before the global fame, there was simply a quiet, thoughtful child with a boundless imagination. And her name was Winona Ryder. Winona Laura Horowitz was born on October 29, 1971, in the small city of Winona, Minnesota, a place that would later inspire the stage name the world would come to know. Her parents, Michael Horowitz and Cynthia Palmer, were writers, editors, and deep thinkers who had spent years immersed in the counterculture movement of the 1960s. They weren't Hollywood people. They weren't chasing fame. They believed in art, literature, and free expression, a foundation that shaped Winona's worldview from the very beginning. When she was still a child, her family moved to a rural, commune-like property in Northern California, miles away from bustling cities. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the kind of place most future movie stars grew up. There were no televisions, no sidewalks, no busy streets, just land, long stretches of quiet, and a community of other families who believed in a creative, alternative lifestyle. Some of their friends were musicians, some were writers, some were simply trying to escape the fast pace of the outside world. Winona's childhood was unconventional, but it was also deeply imaginative. Instead of watching TV, she read constantly. Books by J.D. Salinger, Sylvia Plath, and Jane Austen filled her world. Her parents' friends included poets, artists, and musicians, and she soaked in every bit of creativity around her. That love for storytelling became the earliest hint of what she would someday bring to the screen. But growing up in such an isolated area had its challenges. When she was older, Winona attended public school, where her quiet personality and alternative look often made her stand out. She has spoken openly about being bullied, about feeling like she lived on the outside of things. While those experiences were difficult, they would later become a strength, fuel for the rich emotional inner life she brought to roles that demanded depth, sensitivity, and authenticity. Everything changed when she was 13. Her parents enrolled her in the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. It was the first time she stepped into a world where people saw what she had always felt, that she belonged in storytelling. She quickly found herself drawn to acting, not because of fame, but because of the chance to inhabit different worlds, different emotions, different lives. Her talent was immediately noticeable. During one taped audition, director David Seltzer saw something special. He cast her in his film Lucas in 1986, when she was just 15. That moment marked the beginning of her professional journey. Around that time, she adopted the name Winona Ryder. Ryder inspired partly by musician Mitch Ryder, whom her father admired. Her early roles didn't scream overnight fame, but critics noticed her immediately. She had something different, an honesty that cut through the screen. She didn't act like other rising teen stars. She didn't portray emotions the way Hollywood expected. She had depth, real, lived-in emotion that felt authentic. That authenticity became impossible to ignore after she starred in Tim Burton's Beetlejuice in 1988. As Lydia Deetz, the goth teen who could see ghosts, Winona delivered one of the most memorable performances of the decade. Lydia was quirky, strange, dramatic, and sensitive, yet completely grounded. Winona didn't play her as a stereotype. She played her as a real person, someone who felt invisible and misunderstood, yet deeply observant of the world around her. Audiences connected with Lydia. They understood her loneliness, her dark humor, her curiosity, her intelligence. And suddenly, Winona Ryder wasn't just an actress. She was a symbol for every young person who ever felt different. That same year, she took on Heathers, a dark comedic satire about teen social pressure and high school cruelty. It wasn't a typical 80s teen movie. It was sharper, darker, and more cynical. Winona's performance helped turn Heathers into a cult classic, further solidifying her status as one of the most interesting young actresses in Hollywood. The early 90s brought her the kind of roles most actors wait decades for. She worked with directors like Tim Burton, Francis Ford Coppola, and Martin Scorsese. In Edward Scissorhands, 1990, she starred alongside Johnny Depp, capturing the gentle, emotional heart of the story. In 1992, she appeared in Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, where she proved she could hold her own in a sweeping, dramatic production. The film was visually ambitious and emotionally intense, and her performance stood out for its sincerity and fragility. In 1993, Winona delivered one of her most acclaimed performances in Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence. As May Welland, she portrayed a character who was gentle, yet quietly strategic, innocent, yet subtly complex. Her work earned her a Golden Globe Award and an Academy Award nomination. She was only 22 years old. Her streak continued in 1994 with Little Women, where she played Jo March, one of literature's most beloved characters. Winona's performance was heartfelt, intelligent, and passionate, earning her another Academy Award nomination. For many fans, her Jo remains the definitive version, capturing the spirit of independence and creativity that made the character endure across generations. But perhaps one of her most culturally defining roles came the same year in Reality Bites. As Lelena Pierce, Winona became the face of Generation X, young adults navigating uncertainty, ambition, and identity in a rapidly changing world. Her soft-spoken intensity, her introspective style, and her emotional openness resonated with an entire generation. Winona wasn't just acting, she was representing the feelings of millions of young people. Throughout the 1990s, Winona Ryder became more than a movie star. She was a cultural icon. Her style, simple, thoughtful, slightly rebellious, shaped fashion trends. Her characters weren't perfect or glamorous, they were human, and that humanity made her unforgettable. But like many actors who rise to massive fame at a young age, Winona faced challenges. After years of constant attention, constant filming, constant magazine covers, she hit a breaking point. In 2001, she was arrested for shoplifting. The incident became a media frenzy. The early 2000s were relentless with celebrity scandals, and the press did not hold back. Headlines exaggerated, comedians mocked, and Hollywood questioned whether she would ever return. But behind the headlines was a young woman who was exhausted, overwhelmed, and in need of space. Winona later explained that the situation marked a turning point in her life. It forced her to slow down, to reflect, and to rediscover who she was outside of the pressures of fame. After the trial, she stepped away from Hollywood for several years. She wasn't fired, she wasn't banned. She simply chose to remove herself from the spotlight and give herself the time she needed. She acted occasionally in films like A Scanner Darkly, the Darwin Awards, and later in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009. But she didn't chase stardom. She focused on rebuilding her life privately. For many actors, stepping away for that long can close the door permanently. But Winona Ryder was no ordinary actor. Her talent didn't fade. Her presence didn't diminish. She simply waited for the right project to come along, something meaningful, something emotionally rich, something she could pour herself into. That project arrived in 2016. Stranger Things wasn't expected to become a global phenomenon. It was a nostalgic, character-driven series inspired by 1980s storytelling. But when audiences met Joyce Byers, played with raw, intense, emotional truth by Winona Ryder, they were captivated. Joyce wasn't a glamorous role. She wasn't polished or perfect. She was a mother fighting desperately for her child, emotional, vulnerable, determined, and overflowing with love. Winona's performance anchored the entire show. It reminded viewers of the emotional power she had always possessed. New fans discovered her for the first time, while longtime fans felt an overwhelming sense of rediscovery. It wasn't a comeback. It was a reminder that Winona Ryder had always been one of the greatest actresses of her generation. She simply needed a role worthy of her talents. Since then, Winona has continued to work selectively, choosing projects that have heart, meaning, and personal resonance. She's become an advocate for mental well-being, creativity, and authenticity, often speaking openly and thoughtfully about the pressures of fame and the importance of taking care of oneself. Today, Winona Ryder stands as a symbol of resilience. Her legacy isn't just her filmography, though it's one of the most impressive of any actor of her era. Her legacy is her honesty, her emotional truth, her willingness to play characters who are flawed, strange, vulnerable, brave, lonely, artistic, or searching for something more. She showed the world that you don't have to fit a mold to be unforgettable, from Beetlejuice to Heathers, from Edward Scissorhands to Little Women, from Reality Bites to Stranger Things. Winona Ryder has given us characters who stay with us long after the credits roll, characters who helped shape a generation and continue to inspire new ones. She remains a beloved figure, not because she was perfect, but because she was real. And in a world that often asks people to hide their vulnerabilities, Winona Ryder built an entire legacy on embracing hers.